Hey guys, welcome back to more family drama stories. In this video, OP's parents invited her over just to tell her that their will leaves her with nothing and everything goes to OP's sibling. Let's dive right into the video. And the title story starts like this. I, 30 female, grew up with my parents and my older brother, 35 male. Throughout my entire life, my parents have been extremely biased towards my brother. I come from a traditional culture where men are usually the breadwinner, the one in charge, etc., all that great stuff, and I'm being sarcastic by the way. My family for one is extremely traditional, so that is why they prefer my older brother over me. If I ever did anything wrong, I would get a beating and a lecture, while he would get away scot-free with nothing more than a warning. I was such a goody two-shoes as a kid. The worst things I would do would be breaking a cup on accident or going out a little late with my friends, and we were not even doing anything bad, literally just getting food. On the other hand, my brother was a literal degenerate, sneaking out of the house and coming home every morning, wasted or high. But like I said, I would get punished and he wouldn't. He was handed everything while I had to earn everything, and sometimes my effort was not even rewarded. If he wanted a toy, he would get it straight away. If I wanted a treat or to go out or anything for a special occasion, my parents would call me spoiled and bratty. I always tried getting close to my brother, but he was very annoyed and always shut me out. I guess that's just older brother behavior, but he did not even seem like he cared about me. As for my parents, I tried to excel at everything to make them proud of me, and even tried getting into things that they like to make them more happy with me. My father liked basketball, so I tried joining that, and he did not even attend my games. My mother liked crocheting, and I tried doing that too, but she said that crochet was her time and that she just wanted to relax, so she often left our crocheting sessions. Needless to say, their clear bias made our relationship very strained. I became very secluded and often spent days at home just by myself because I knew my parents and brother would not care to entertain a relationship with me. Although I still loved and cared for my family deeply, I decided to refrain from talking to them. I focused on things that made me happy, like my extracurriculars, my friends, and most especially my pursuit of my career. My dream, even as a child, was to become an entrepreneur. After I graduated high school, I entered college for business administration and began learning how to run a business. Through a bunch of internships and some jobs after college, I learned the ins and outs of how businesses worked practically, because sometimes the things you learn in school are not enough. I took out a loan to establish my own business, a phone tech repair shop. That sounds out of the blue, I'm sure, but I was always very interested in technology, even in high school and in college, and I wanted to do something related to that in my business. My business was very small at first and I was the only worker, but soon my business expanded and I began hiring many more people. I was able to expand my business to do more than just in-shop work. We were able to do on-call service, which for my business is essentially going to the home of the person who has a problem. This is for more advanced things that need to be fixed, like PCs and devices that are not able to be easily brought into the shop. It's like calling a plumber, except the plumber helps to repair your TV, not your toilet. Anyways, my company is not a big one, but in my city it is quite popular. Not to toot my own horn or anything, and I've provided a lot of help for people in my area, which makes me extremely happy. Now, I believe that's all the context you need, and let's move on to the story. 2 months ago I received a Facebook message. I don't typically use Facebook personally, I really just use it to manage my business profile there. But I saw that someone had sent me a message. I found it odd, so I checked it out to see what it was. I was surprised to find that it was my mom. I never asked for my parents' Facebook account since I downloaded Facebook when I started my business, and at that point I was barely in contact with my parents. Essentially, the message greeted me saying that it had been a long time since we had seen each other. Last time I came home was Christmas of my senior year of college. She essentially invited me to dinner that weekend in my hometown with them and my brother. It was really out of the blue, as there were no holidays nearby, and it wasn't like they had invited me into any recent ones anyway, but for some reason I felt guilty saying no, so I just said that I would come home anyway. I think part of me wanted to see my family after so long. After all, it had been nearly 8 years at this point, and now they were finally giving me the chance to do that. My hometown is an hour plane ride away, so I booked the next flight and headed back. I felt that staying at home would be a little too much, so I booked a hotel instead. The dinner was for the next day at a pretty fancy restaurant, I would say, so I met up with my family there. It was awkward to say the least. I was not expecting any sentimentality from them and I received none, but our conversations were really choppy and whatnot, and it was honestly just me asking questions. Sometimes my mom would ask a few things, I would respond, and she would just smile and nod. I did manage to tell her about my career, but my mom does not think that tech repair is a high-class job, so she was not really proud or anything. My father barely tried, so I have to give my mother some credit. We waited for my brother for about an hour. We arrived at the reservation time, but he was late, as he had always been, which annoyed me, but my parents did not seem to care though. We ate through dinner and had some meager conversation. I spoke a little bit with my brother. To no one's surprise, certainly not mine, he had no job, not a stable one at least, and he told me that he was dabbling in freelancing, but I know my brother. I have no hate against freelancing. In fact, I think freelancing is wonderful, especially if it makes someone happy or serves as a creative outlet. However, I know my brother and I know that freelancing is lazing around while he puts no effort into finding a job because he can claim that he is doing freelancing. It angers me that he doesn't try to support our parents whatsoever and would rather put his money into stupid things. His room is full of figurines and he doesn't even try to pay any bills, but we have a lot of money saved up, so I guess that is why my parents never cared. Anyways, in the middle of dinner, my parents stood up. They said they had an announcement and would like the both of us, me and my brother, to pay attention. It was a long speech, essentially about how they were getting old and that they didn't know when they would pass, so they wanted to make it clear who would inherit what. They made a long spiel about how they wanted to pass on their belongings to someone who deserved it, someone who had supported them even now, etc. And I began feeling a little bit of hope, thinking that my parents now actually recognized my love and care for them for once, but of course, no. My parents smugly announced that my brother would inherit everything, from the house to the money in their savings, whatever assets they had, just everything. My brother was extremely smug and happy and began rubbing it in my face. I was extremely pissed. I remained calm, however, because I knew that causing a scene would only villainize me, and we were also in public. So I calmly asked them if the reading of the will was why they invited us here, and they said yes, to which I followed up with, "Then why did you invite me if you knew you would give me nothing?" They simply shrugged and said, "We thought you should know." "Don't act surprised, it was not like you were there for us. If you expected anything, you're a spoiled brat." I simply replied, "Fine, don't bother contacting me again." I stood up and placed down some money for my portion of the meal before storming out. I blocked them on everything, Facebook, phone numbers, etc. It was not that I really wanted anything from their will, I frankly don't care. But I thought for once that they were considering me, as they never had, but they tricked me, and frankly, it was quite cruel. There was no reason for them to have invited me if they knew they were going to give everything to my brother. They wanted to rub it in my face though, I could tell. Although I was sad, I tried to continue with my life. I had lived for a decade without relying on them or contacting them, and the rest of my life would be no problem as well. Any sympathy and sentiment I had for them immediately vanished. Everything was going well until a month later, when I woke up to excessive ringing at my door. It was nearly 2 in the morning, so I was confused as to why somebody was at my door. I was very wary though. Although I did not think a robber would be so upfront as to ring my doorbell, I prepared myself with a crowbar that I have in my storage closet. I carefully opened the door only to find my parents. I'd never told them where I lived, so I was very shocked that they were standing there. I asked them how they knew where I lived, but they did not respond. They started begging to be let inside, and they said that after they had given my brother access to their bank accounts, he ran all their money into the ground by gambling and paying for all sorts of mass expenses. Mind you, it had only been a month since the dinner. All their savings essentially disappeared overnight and they didn't know what to do. I asked them then why they were at my front door begging to come in. They admitted that they supposedly made a mistake and that they needed some money to get back on their feet. They made all sorts of promises claiming they would give everything to me once they are financially stable, but I refused. I told them that their bias was what caused them to be here in the first place and that they deserved what was coming to them. I told them to never come here again and that if I saw them near my property at all again, I would call the cops on them. Then I slammed the door on their face, and from what I heard, they are struggling like crazy now, begging any of my other family members for money to help them. No one trusts them enough to hand over their money though, and my extended family all agrees that it was a stupid decision on their part to give a bunch of money to my brother. And honestly, I still felt a little bad, but I knew that in the end they only started to care for me when they needed me, and I deserved better than that. And yeah guys, if you enjoyed these family drama stories, then please don't forget to like the video. The next one is a story from r/entitled_parents, and it is titled "Entitled Mom Tried to Sue Me for Drugging Her Child." So I, 19 female, am a server at a restaurant with a bar in it. The bar side of the restaurant is of course 21 plus, and anyone who orders an alcoholic beverage is required to show the waiter their ID. The rest of the restaurant, however, is child-friendly. We were serving breakfast and I was serving a table of 2, a young girl who looked about 8 or 9 and her entitled mother, EM. However, this mom is more than entitled, as she will be arrested by the end of this story. I go and take their drink orders after the hostess sits them down. The young girl gets an orange juice while the mom gets a water and a mimosa. I of course check the mom's ID and see that she's born in the early 80s, so she's good for a mimosa, and I let the bartender know that I need a mimosa to serve and I work on the orange juice for the child and the mother's water. Once I have all 3 drinks, I serve their table and take their meal orders. Everything seems to be going smoothly until I bring back their meals. As I bring back the plates, the mother screams at me, "You served my child alcohol!" I know for a fact that cannot be true, because I'm the one who made the juice and never even went behind the bar where the drinks are. Me, "Ma'am, you must be mistaken. I did not put any alcohol in the juice. I had my eyes on it until it reached your table." EM, "Well then smell it." She handed me her child's glass and it did smell like alcohol. Me, once again, I know that I did not put alcohol in your child's drink. Either someone did it while you were not looking, or you did it yourself. But the juice had no alcohol before it came to your table. The mom looked at me angrily and demanded to see my manager. EM, "I'm gonna sue you for giving my child alcohol. Bring me your manager." I get the manager, and she gets both mine and the mom's side of the story. Security was even alerted because apparently the child had drunk a few sips of the alcohol. My manager, security, and I went and watched the security footage, since both me and the mom swore that we did not put alcohol in the juice. Not only did we discover that I was innocent, but we saw the mom, as soon as I've placed the glasses down and left, drink half of the child's juice and filled it back up with her mimosa. Then she instructed her child to drink some of it. The mom was arrested for giving her kid alcohol and was given a lifetime ban from the restaurant. If she appears again, she will be immediately arrested again. Not how I planned my work morning, but at least it was amusing to watch an EM get what she deserved. Edit, I was informed by someone who spoke to the kid that they didn't even want orange juice and hates orange juice. Her mom told her to order it just so she could mix the drinks. The kid originally wanted chocolate milk. You best believe I made sure she got her chocolate milk. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Me and my parents have been farmers in our town for a really long time. We had been thinking about making a change for a while, looking for a better place to farm with soil that would bring in more money. So we started talking to folks we knew from outside our town. They pointed us to this piece of land, said the owner was selling it for a good price because he wanted to move to the city. The owner, he was the only child of an old couple. He had already moved his folks to the city and was going back and forth, trying to sell the farm as quick as he could. We looked at a few other places during those months, but somehow we always ended up going back to that nice rural farm. So after my dad went back home, I decided to stick around at the rural farm. It needed a lot of changes and fixes, so I called up some folks who could help with that. However, when they finally arrived, we ran into a problem that I hadn't seen coming. So there was this foreign vehicle parked right on my farm, and the owner of that vehicle was going nuts, yelling and pointing fingers at the workers that I had called in. I walked up to her and couldn't help but groan because I knew exactly what kind of person she was about to be. You see, there's something about Karens, no matter where you are, no matter how far you are from those big cities, Karens somehow always manage to find ways to annoy you and act like they are better than everyone else. They are also almost always dressing the same, which is honestly kind of funny. Anyway, this Karen pointed her finger at me and went off about how dare an immigrant like me buy a property on what she claimed was her land. Yeah, she called this whole damn town with its diverse culture her town, like her forefathers had brought the whole place or something. I had no plans in arguing with people like her, so I just told Karen to move her vehicle off my property, but instead of listening, this Karen just laughed and said that the previous owner gave her the green light to park her cars on the farm, so she thought she had every right to do so now as well. We went back and forth for a good while. Karen kept acting all entitled and I kept refusing to give in to her childish behavior. After about 30 minutes she finally moved her car, but I had a hunch that this was not the last of the problems Karen was gonna cause me. The very next day I decided to cover my bases and put up no trespassing signs all over my property. However, it seemed like Karen could not care less about my signs. Sure enough, in the evening there was her car parked right on my farm again. I headed over and this time I noticed someone else getting out of the car. He looked about the same age as Karen, all white with a big beard and dressed head to toe in denim. It seemed like he was trying to intimidate me, rolling up his sleeves and flexing his muscles. But honestly, I could not help but find it hilarious. Here he was trying to outmuscle a guy who had worked in the fields his whole life while he barely had a tan. Without even giving the other guy a second glance, I told Karen straight up to move her car off my farm or I would have to take some serious action. Now, I don't usually use such polite words with Karens like her, but I was still getting used to this new town and it was only my second day there. But of course, these troublemakers just laughed at my warning. The guy puffed up his chest and got all in my face telling me to keep my immigrant feet off their land or else they would make sure I could never walk again. I couldn't help but notice that he reeked of cheap cigars. I rubbed my nose, turned to Karen and told her straight up that I would be calling the cops. She was trespassing on my property and now she could deal with them if she wanted to. Karen let out an annoyed huff and proudly declared that she had a legal contract with the previous owner and that she was going to prove to everyone that immigrants like me were nothing but liars here to steal from them. She even threatened to call the police herself tomorrow to get me thrown out of town. But she said today that she was too tired to deal with my so-called discrimination and wanted to get away from my farm. It seemed like Karen's partner was not quite in on her plan as he looked back at her, clearly confused. I couldn't help but chuckle. He shot me a glare before heading back to Karen's car and finally they drove off my property. I knew Karen was probably just stalling, planning to make some fake contract papers to back up her claim or something. Maybe she was too dim to realize that since I had bought the property from the previous owners, I could simply call the previous owners and prove her wrong. Anyway, whatever she was gonna do was gonna be both hectic and downright hilarious for me. The next day, there was no sign of Karen's car on my property, and it seemed like she had not even thought about calling the police on me. The day after that was the same, and so was the whole next week. During that time, I had called up the old owner to confirm if what Karen was saying was true or not. And while it was true that the owner's father had let Karen park there, none of it was in writing and there was definitely no contract like Karen was talking about. I'd also asked him if I could call him up in case there was any police investigation, and he agreed. The work on my farm was going great, so when Thanksgiving rolled around, I asked all my coworkers to take the whole week off and spend it with their families. I had planned to have my parents over for the holidays, but the very next day when my farm was empty of workers, it suddenly got filled with cars. I walked out to see Karen and what looked like her entire family there, getting out of their cars and heading towards her house like they owned the place. Karen had this smug look on her face as if she thought I would be intimidated by the number of people that she had on her side. Boy, was she in for a surprise. I grabbed my phone and found the number of the local towing service I had saved for this very moment. I made the call explaining the situation to the towing company. I told them about the unauthorized vehicles on my property and asked if they could send a truck over to remove them. The person on the other end assured me that they would dispatch a tow truck right away. After what seemed like an eternity, I spotted the tow truck turning into the dirt road leading to my farm. I went over to greet the tow truck driver and explained the situation to him. He nodded understandingly and started preparing his equipment to load up the cars. Karen predictably exploded at the sight. She threatened to call the police and sue me for damages, claiming that she had a contract with the previous owner allowing her to park here. here. She argued with the driver as well, but the driver was not having any of it. With the tow truck driver's no-nonsense approach, Karen's cars were loaded up one by one and hauled away. It was a satisfying sight to see them finally being removed from my property, but true to her word, Karen called the police, but she didn't stop there. She tried to sue me for discrimination and for not honoring some supposed contract she claimed to have with the previous owner about parking arrangements. Once the police arrived and the situation unfolded, it was quickly evident that there was never any valid contract in place as Karen claimed. Her shoddy forged documents couldn't withstand scrutiny, and the testimony of the previous owners themselves contradicted her story. The tables turned swiftly, and it was Karen who found herself in trouble. She was charged with forging documents and attempting to deceive the authorities. However, I was not done yet. I decided to take legal action against Karen and sued her for trespassing and causing emotional distress, and the court granted me a restraining order against her to prevent any future incidents. The police then arrested Karen, and although I knew her family members were able to bail her out later on, the entire ordeal was punishment enough to make her think twice about ever trying to park on my property again. And the last one is a funny petty revenge story. It is titled, "This is the level of petty we should all aspire to be." So I'm not posting anonymously because I hope the person on the other side of this sees it and will know who I am. So this morning, out running errands, I saw what appeared to be a cell phone in parking lot near the Purple Cow, and sure enough it was. I took said phone, cleaned it up and put it to charge because it only had 12% left, and waited. Well, about 2 hours later, the phone rings and I answer. Instead of inquiring as to whom I was and how I got the phone, the gentleman on the other side began cursing me. He called me a thief and a no-good POS and went on to say how he was gonna track the phone, and when he found me he was going to reach up my butt and pull my guts out. Well, sir, just so you know, your phone has a good charge, so you should be able to track it, and to give you a head start, it is now somewhere off 112 eastbound between Pete's Highway and Juban Exit. Good luck and feel free to contact again when and if you find out. Our first chat was so lovely. And yeah guys, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, otherwise I will see you again tomorrow.